Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take fascinating, sometimes complex topics and really break them down for you.
And today we're getting into some really interesting stuff from The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumita Koga.
Right, specifically looking at ideas that came up in online discussions about the book. It's all about Adlerian psychology.
Yeah, and the book itself is set up like a conversation, which is pretty neat. It's this philosopher talking with a young guy who's just trying to figure out how to be happy.
Makes it very approachable. And Adlerian psychology, it's got a decent following, right? Europe, the US.
Oh, yeah. And it claims to have these, well, simple answers to that huge question of happiness.
Simple, but maybe not easy. I heard the book basically says reading it could change your life, and that Adler's ideas were like a century ahead of their time.
They were definitely forward-thinking and maybe still not fully grasped. So our mission today is to pull out some key ideas from those discussions.
We'll be looking at how Adler's thinking kind of pushes back against common ideas about, trauma, emotions, change, relationships, all the big stuff.
Exactly. It challenges a lot of conventional wisdom.
Okay, let's dive in. So the book apparently starts with this young man talking about his friend.
Right. A friend who's become a shut-in. Can't go out.
And the immediate thought is, okay, what happened? Bullying, bad childhood, maybe over-pampered even, like past stuff causing the present problem.
That's the standard view, isn't it? Focusing on the cause, the etiology. What happened back then?
But Adler flips that.
Completely. Adlerian psychology is all about teleology. The purpose, the goal.
Purpose? Wait, so instead of asking why is he like this?
You ask, what goal does staying inside achieve for him right now?
Huh. Okay. Can you give an analogy?
Think about having a cold. You've got a fever, you feel awful. Yes, you caught a virus before, but right now, you want to treat the fever, the headache.
You deal with the present symptoms.
Exactly. Adler says we should focus on the present goal, not get bogged down in past causes. It's about what you're doing with your experiences.
Okay, this is where I heard it gets pretty intense. The book apparently just states, trauma does not exist.
Yeah, that line definitely grabs your attention. It sounds harsh, almost dismissive.
Right, like denying people's real pain.
But it's more nuanced. Adler isn't saying bad things don't happen or that they don't affect us deeply. Of course they do.
So what does he mean?
He means that it's the meaning we assign to those past events that shapes our present. We are self-determining.
So the friend who says, I was bullied, therefore I can't socialize.
From an Adlerian view, that person is choosing that interpretation. That thought, I can't fit in because I was abused, might actually be serving the current goal of, well, not having to go out.
So the feeling of anxiety, the fear, it's being manufactured.
Potentially, yes. Manufactured to justify the goal of staying inside, avoiding potential social discomfort or failure.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot to chew on. Let's switch gears to anger. The transcripts mention the young man getting mad about coffee spilled on his jacket. Seems like a pretty normal reaction.
It does seem normal. You feel that heat rise, the injustice of it.
Yeah.
But the philosopher argues, again, from teleology.
So anger isn't just a reaction.
He suggests it's often fabricated, a tool we use to achieve a goal.
Fabricated, like fake. That feels wrong. Anger feels so real.
Not necessarily fake emotion, but emotion used strategically, perhaps unconsciously. What was the goal of yelling about the coffee? Maybe to dominate the situation, to make the spiller submit.
How can we know it's a tool?
The book uses this great example. A mother shouting at her child. The phone rings. Instantly, she switches to her polite, calm telephone voice.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Right. It shows anger can be switched on and off. It's controllable, at least to some extent. So the shouting wasn't just raw emotion. It served the purpose of controlling the child.
So anger is a means to an end. Teleology again.
Exactly. Even when it feels spontaneous, it's worth asking, what am I trying to accomplish with this anger?
This implies we have more control than we think, which ties into the next big idea, right? The power to change.
Absolutely fundamental to Adler. People can change. We are not just products of our past.
Which is different from, say, some interpretations of Freud, where the past feels very deterministic.
Very different. Freudian etiology can sometimes lead you down a path of feeling like your fate was sealed by early experiences. Determinism, nihilism even.
But Adler says no.
Adler says we choose our lifestyle. And that's not about possessions. It's your whole way of being, your personality, your worldview.
Wait, I chose my personality. I chose to be anxious sometimes, or pessimistic. That sounds unlikely.
The philosopher suggests this choice happens, maybe unconsciously, around age 10. Influenced by everything around you, sure, but ultimately you selected it.
I don't remember choosing.
Of course, not consciously, perhaps. But the crucial point isn't how you chose it back then. It's that if you did choose it.
Then I can choose again, now.
Precisely. The past influences, but it doesn't determine. What matters is what you do now with the knowledge that your lifestyle is chosen. The responsibility is in the present moment.
Okay. That leads to this idea of the if-only excuse, which the transcripts mention.
Ah, yes, the if only. If only I had more time. If only I didn't have this job. If only I were more like person Y.
We all do that, don't we?
We do. And Adler would say it's often an excuse to avoid change, to avoid taking action. It protects us from the risk of failure.
Like the aspiring novelist example, blaming the day job for not writing.
Exactly. The real reason might be the fear of writing something bad, or facing criticism, or just not being good enough. The if only keeps the dream alive without the risk.
I remember saying if only I had more talent, I'd learn guitar. Definitely a way to avoid sucking at first.
Right. It feels safer not to try. But Adler insisted you have to take action, risk failure, to actually change or achieve anything. You can't just wish for it.
Okay, moving on. This next one felt a bit strange. The goal behind disliking oneself. How can that be a goal?
It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? The young man in the book admits he dislikes himself, focuses on his flaws,
Yeah, seems common enough.
but the philosopher flips it again. He suggests that focusing on your flaws and disliking yourself can be a preemptive strike
Preemptive strike against what?
against interpersonal relationships, against the possibility of being hurt, rejected, or negated by others.
So if I already think I'm unlikable,
And then it doesn't hurt as much if someone else seems to dislike you.
right?
And it gives you a reason not to engage deeply with people in the first place.
You find your shortcomings, focus on them, decide you're not good enough for relationships, and therefore avoid the risk of getting hurt in them.
It's a strategy, albeit a painful one, to avoid vulnerability. You build a fortress of self-criticism.
Wow. Okay, this connects to feelings of inferiority then.
Definitely. Adler makes a key distinction here. Feelings of inferiority aren't based on objective facts, but on our subjective interpretation in comparison to others.
Like the height example. Being 155 centimeters is a fact, but feeling inferior because of it is an interpretation.
Exactly. Someone else that height might feel perfectly fine, or even find advantages. The feeling comes from the social comparison and the meaning you attach.
And there's a difference between that feeling and an inferiority complex.
Big difference. A feeling of inferiority can be healthy. I'm not as skilled at this yet, so I'll work harder. It motivates growth.
Okay, striving.
But an inferiority complex is when that feeling becomes an excuse. I can't succeed because I'm not well educated or because I'm too short or whatever. It stops you from trying.
It becomes your reason for inaction.
Right. And sometimes people develop a superiority complex, boasting, name-dropping, acting arrogant, which Adler saw as just on the flip side, masking a deep-seated inferiority complex.
Trying too hard to prove you're not inferior.
Precisely. Like constant name-dropping, often a sign someone feels inadequate on their own.
Adler also wasn't keen on competition, was he?
No, he saw it as inherently problematic because it sets up vertical relationships. Superior, inferior, winner, loser.
Which makes people anxious.
Constantly anxious about where they stand, always feeling like they're falling short or need to beat someone else. It breeds unhappiness.
So what's the alternative?
Horizontal relationships. Seeing everyone, regardless of role, your boss, your friend, a stranger, as fundamentally equal human beings. You treat them with respect, as comrades.
Not trying to be better than, just alongside.
Exactly. Comparing yourself constantly puts you in a race you didn't even agree to run. Focus on your own progress, on becoming a better version of yourself, not on overtaking others.
This sounds really liberating, actually. Which brings us to another super practical concept. The separation of tasks.
Ah, yes. This is huge for sorting out relationship problems. Probably one of the most directly applicable ideas.
So what's the core principle?
It's about figuring out whose business something really is. Whose task is it?
And how do you figure that out?
You ask. Who ultimately receives the result, the consequence of the choice being made? That person owns the task.
Okay, give me the studying child example again.
Right. The consequences of not studying, bad grades, lack of knowledge, land directly on the child. So studying is the child's task.
And trying to force the child to study.
That's the parent intervening in the child's task. Adler would say that's not the parent's job. The parent's task might be to offer support, create a good environment, but not to make them study. That intrusion causes conflict.
So you support, but you don't control their choices or outcomes.
Exactly. It applies everywhere. A therapist can't change the client. Change is the client's task. believing in your partner. That's your task. How they behave based on that belief, that's their task.
What about parents who disapprove of your career choice?
How they feel about your choice, their disappointment or worry, that's their emotional task to manage. It's not your job to live your life solely to manage their feelings.
Even a boss throwing a tantrum.
Managing their anger is the boss's task. You don't have to absorb it or fix it for them.
And this relates back to being disliked.
Absolutely. Whether someone likes you or approves of you, that's their task. Their thoughts, their feelings about you belong to them. You can't control it, and trying to is exhausting and ultimately futile.
So you focus on your tasks, your choices.
Right. It creates clear boundaries and reduces so much unnecessary conflict and burden.
Okay, next up, the desire for recognition. We all want it, right? Praise, approval.
It seems like a basic human need. But Adlerian psychology actually denies the need for recognition, says we shouldn't seek it.
Don't seek recognition, why not?
Because seeking recognition means you end up constantly trying to meet other people's expectations. You're living their lives, not your own.
You become dependent on external validation.
Exactly. And paradoxically, constantly worrying about how others judge you makes you incredibly self-centered. Your focus is always on, how am I being seen?
The transcript mentioned picking up litter.
Yeah, if you pick up litter, should you stop if no one thanks you or praises you?
Well, no, the litter still needs picking up.
Right. Your contribution shouldn't depend on applause. Living only for praise is, as the philosopher says, an unfree way to live.
Which leads directly to the courage to be disliked.
It's the flip side. The price of freedom in your relationships, the freedom to live authentically according to your own principles, is that some people won't like it. They won't approve.
So freedom isn't just about, like, political freedom.
No, it's internal freedom, too. Freedom from the need for constant approval.
And separation of tasks helps here. Wanting to be liked is maybe my inclination.
But whether someone actually likes you or dislikes you is their task, their reaction, their choice. You can't force it. It's the lead a horse to water idea.
You can be kind, authentic, respectful your task, but you can't make them like you their task.
Exactly. And so the courage to be happy requires the courage to accept that you might be disliked. Owning that fundamentally changes your relationships.
You stop trying to please everyone.
And start living more authentically. It's a trade-off. Universal approval versus genuine freedom. Adler argues for freedom.
Okay, let's shift to community feeling. This sounds more positive, maybe. Moving beyond just the self.
Yes, it's about shifting from self-interest or even self-obsession to a genuine concern for others. Adler called it social interest.
And the transcript said there are 3 parts to building this.
Right. Self-acceptance, confidence in others, and contribution to others.
Okay, break those down. Self-acceptance.
It's not about pretending you're perfect. It's about accepting yourself as you are, flaws and all, maybe seeing yourself as a 60%, and then focusing on what you can do to move closer to your ideal towards 100%.
So it's not just empty affirmations. I am great.
No, it's acknowledging reality, accepting the irreplaceable this me, and having the courage to change what can be changed.
And confidence in others. Sounds risky. People let you down.
It is risky. Adler advocates for unconditional belief in others, at least as a starting point for building deep relationships.
Unconditional, even if they might betray that trust.
Yes, because whether they betray your trust or not is ultimately their task. Your task is to decide whether you want to build connections based on trust. Without that baseline confidence, deep relationships are impossible.
Okay. And the third part, contribution to others.
This is key. It's about feeling useful, feeling like you're making a contribution to your comrades, your community.
But not self-sacrifice, not martyrdom.
No, it's not about erasing yourself. It's that the feeling of contribution gives you a profound sense of your own worth. I am of use to someone.
Like a dishwashing example. It's just washing dishes, but...
If you frame it as contributing to the household, contributing to your community, even a small one, it changes the feeling. You feel valuable.
In this community, it's not just family and friends.
Adler saw it extending much further to your local community, your country, all of humanity, past, present, future, even inanimate objects in nature. It's an ideal, maybe unattainable, but it guides you.
Away from being self-centered.
Exactly. Because self-centeredness, in this view, isn't just selfishness. It's being constantly preoccupied with, how do others see me? Community feeling shifts that focus outward. You're part of the community, not the center of the universe. Think of a globe versus a map with you at the center.
You find your place within the whole.
Right. And paradoxically, focusing on contributing to others is where you find your deepest sense of belonging and worth.
Okay. What about this pursuit of easy superiority versus the courage to be normal?
This often relates back to childhood behaviors. Kids who misbehave, disrupt class, act out, are often seeking attention. They want to feel special, significant, but without putting in the effort of, say, academic achievement or genuine contribution.
So problem behavior is a shortcut to feeling important.
It can be, yes, a pursuit of easy superiority. It could be being the class clown or later delinquency, or even withdrawing into being a shut-in all ways to get attention and feel unique, albeit negatively.
And the alternative is the courage to be normal. That sounds
It,
underwhelming.
it sounds boring, maybe, but it means accepting that you don't need to be exceptionally good or exceptionally bad to have worth. Just being you, contributing in ordinary ways is enough. It's rejecting the need for constant validation or special status.
Accepting your capabilities without needing to be a superstar or a supervillain.
Exactly. And it links to the Socratic idea that no one desires evil. Even problem behavior is often a misguided attempt to achieve some form of good, like belonging, recognition, or significance.
Okay, final big concept. Life as a series of moments. Dancing in the now.
This contrasts with seeing life as a linear journey towards a specific destination, like climbing a mountain just to reach the summit. Adler called that kinetic living.
Always focused on the future goal.
Right. Instead, he emphasized energial living like dancing. The goal of dancing isn't to arrive somewhere. The goal is the dancing itself. Each step, each movement is a fulfillment.
So life is lived in the present moment.
Life is the series of present moments. The past is gone, the future isn't here. All we ever truly have is the now. So focus on living earnestly and fully in this moment.
But what about meaning? If life isn't heading somewhere specific.
You assign meaning to your life. And Adler suggests the way to do that is through community feeling, through contribution. Happiness is the feeling of contribution.
Mm.
The desire for recognition is just a flawed path towards that feeling. If you have community feeling, the need for external recognition fades away.
You find meaning in the dance itself.
Precisely. And the transcripts mention the experience of adopting this view can be like someone nearsighted finally putting on glasses.
A sudden clarity.
Yeah, a realization that the world, the here and now, is actually shining brightly once you shift your perspective. It can be truly transformative.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot we've covered. This Adlerian perspective from the courage to be disliked in these discussions, it really does offer a, well, quite a radical shift.
It really does. It puts the power squarely back in your hands, emphasizing choice, purpose, the way you relate to others through horizontal relationships and separating tasks, and finding meaning through contribution.
And that freedom that comes from having the courage to be disliked, to not live for others' approval.
It's definitely not a quick fix. These ideas need chewing over, digesting, maybe trying out in small ways.
For sure. So as you're listening, maybe think about those core ideas. Teleology. What's the purpose behind a feeling or behavior? Separation of tasks, what's truly your business. And that courage, could you handle being disliked for being authentic?
And maybe consider that feeling of contribution. Where do you feel useful? Where could you contribute more? Not for praise, but for that inherent sense of worth.
It makes you wonder about those if-onlys we discussed. What if the real obstacle isn't the external circumstance, but simply finding the courage to act right now in this moment?
And perhaps a final thought to ponder. What could change if you consciously decided to stop dwelling so much on past causes or future anxieties, and instead focused your energy on the meaning you can create and the contribution you can make right here, right now?
Could that be the key to a less burdened, more fulfilling life? Lots to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.